Hello. Um, I've just finished watching the Amazon Fallout TV show, and I absolutely loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. They just took what made the Fallout games enjoyable as far as design and attitude, and just turned it into a TV show. There was no need to, change certain things around because of a different vision or set it in an alternate timeline. They just made a Fallout TV show. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. Really, really enjoyed it. So that got me thinking about post-apocalyptic games and the kind of post-apocalyptic games that I've run or actually played in. Now, I first came across post-apocalyptic games with Twilight 2000, the original Games Designers Workshop one in the box set, and I loved that game. I wasn't a fan of the system. I didn't like the D100 system. I didn't like the way that vehicle damage rules worked. It was all seemed a little bit overly complicated. So with a little bit of modifying, I used that for some games, and the three big games I got out of it was a short campaign of just basically the guys just trying to get back from Poland back to England, um, and another one was set in India, and they were trying to get from India back to England, so when everything was still nuked. And then the other one, I actually wasn't post-apocalyptic. I just set it in the Vietnam War, with a bunch of friends who were playing GIs in the bush and being hunted by the predator of all things. That's a completely different story. It was fun though. So yeah, post-apocalyptic games. My first experience was Twilight 2000. Now since then, of course, Free League have done a new Twilight 2000, which is really, really good. I never played the second edition version of it, but I also dabbled with Aftermath in the early 80s, and in an edition of Gamma World, which came out with I think it was third edition when I first played it. Both of which were really, really good. Really, really enjoyed them. And there was also a game, I think it's down here. Fantasy Flight Games were released, and it was a series of End of the World games. The one I've got there is the Alien Invasion one. They were good fun as well. The thing I liked about the End of the World ones is that you weren't just creating characters to go out and fight aliens or fight monsters or zombies or anything like that. You actually playing a version of yourself, even though you could play characters like that. You were playing your version of yourself, and your stats were decided by your fellow players about what they thought about you, and then your equipment is basically what was in the house at the time that you were in, which I thought was actually quite cool. It was actually okay, but it was a good game. It was good fun. We got a few good sessions out of that. Nice little system. But I've never really dived into them. We've done short campaigns with ideas that I've had, or basically I was just gaming with concepts. It was a concept that I'd had of a post-apocalyptic game which I dived into. But when I came to play Fallout for the first time, I played the first Fallout game when it was still into play, and then I didn't play it again until Fallout 3 when it was Bethesda, and I really enjoyed the Fallout 3 Bethesda. I prefer that sort of first-person sort of aspect to it, because I felt like I was actually exploring the world. Whilst the original two Fallout games, which I played Fallout 2 since, the original two Fallout games were more tactical and more strategic. I actually preferred the immediacy of the newer Fallout games, and yeah, great. Really, really enjoyed them, and I think that was the first time I ever really thought about properly running a full long campaign in a post-apocalyptic world. Because the Twilight 2000 ones, the reason why they didn't last is because the great thing about the Fallout in the Fallout world, there's loads of different things you can do, different factions. You've got mutants you can go up against. You can create entire new vaults. There's loads of different kinds of lore that you can pick at. Whereas with Twilight 2000, you're literally just a bunch of soldiers trying not to die every day, which can make for some. Don't get me wrong, it can make for some really intense games. But I struggled to conceive a long-term campaign out of it, because every other game would feel like every other game. Whereas with Fallout, you could differentiate different adventures with, oh, that happened in a vault, oh, that happened in an enclave area, oh, that happened in what's left of Washington. With Twilight 2000, it was like most one destroyed city is very much like the other. So, but that's probably, well, it's not probably, that is definitely just my lack of vision as far as Twilight 2000 is concerned. And it was definitely my lack of focus as well. I had other games going on as well, so I didn't put as much time into it as I would have liked. So after I played Fallout 3, I had some ideas of my own of what you could do with a post-apocalyptic game, and I created a game for my old sketch system, which doesn't exist anymore, called the 13th Year. And the conceit was is that the Second World War started in 1939. As we all know, it ended in 1945. But in my alternate timeline, it was Hitler had actually built his own atomic weapons and loads of V2 rockets, which were longer range, and scattered them across the earth as kind of a scorched earth policy. So when the Allies did finally win in Berlin in 1945, he basically just initiated this mass launch all over the world from his Axis places, and the whole world got nuked. So basically, you've got it's basically post-apocalyptic, but post-World War II. And I kind of like the idea of that aesthetic. And the kind of the feeling behind it and what it would be like, you know what I mean? These people, I mean, the country, Europe especially, was already massively decimated by the Second World War. Entire cities just skeletons of what they used to be. Imagine that on a global scale. That's the way I was looking at it. So I developed the game, used my old sketch system. I'm actually redeveloping it at the moment using my new D12 system, the same system that I've used for Deep Space and Deep Magic and Night Stalkers and those games, which I'll put a link to in the description. Pun. Sorry, plug. Not a pun. That was a silly thing to say. But yeah. So I was a bit more focused on that because I had some bigger ideas of where I wanted to go with what was happening. So I focused on what was happening throughout the world. So the Nazis had basically tried to rebuild themselves and called themselves the Iron Nazis, and they wore all this metal armor and blah 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 because weapons were getting a little bit scarce but they still had huge factories which they were churning out weapons and tanks and all sorts. So they basically rebranded as the Iron Nazis and then tried to carry on with the war. And everybody's like, oh, come on, really? You know what I mean? They've already been nuked really, really badly, so they can hardly resist them. So they've already got loads of ships as well which survived. So they've sailed over to the east coast of the United States, the Iron Nazis have. And they've started an invasion on the east coast by sailing up the Potomac. And basically starting their attack there, and the Americans were probably the worst hit because they were getting hit by both German and by Japanese V2 explosives, atomic missiles. So they're on the back foot. So that's kind of resistance, and Europe is still trying to free itself of this new yoke now. This new spread of fascism all over the place. Germany itself is like they've had enough and just don't want it anymore. So they're trying to. It's like that fifth columnists are just basically now their own fighting force, trying to destroy the Iron Nazis. And in Japan, what's left of the Imperial Japan is basically trying to kickstart the war because again the Americans are on the back foot. They've all had to run back to America because they got nuked. So now they're trying to sort themselves out. They're trying to retake territories, but the people of Japan who have just got hit by Hiroshima and Nagasaki are like, no, what are you doing? This is madness. So a civil war has started in Japan, and then you've also got like the countries of the Commonwealth or the British Empire as it was then, realising that Britain's been pretty much decimated, and now here's their chance to finally free themselves of the shackles of the Empire. But the British Empire really want them to keep them together because that's all they've got left. So basically the war's carried on around the globe. The war is still raging on. In fact, worse than before, because all those countries that weren't involved beforehand, that stayed behind their borders and had no reason to fight anybody else, now they're involved through no fault of their own. They've either been hit by a missile, or they've been affected by the atomic or by the fallout, the radiation that's coming across the borders, and it's decimating crops and people. So the reason why it's called the 13th year is because I was setting the game in 1952, 13 years after the Second World War started, and I just thought it'd be quite a cool little game. Even though I've never seriously run campaigns in post-apocalyptic settings, I've definitely considered it, and I really do want to do it, and even more so now after Fallout TV shows. Some of the visuals in there are absolutely stunning. That opening scene with Walton Goggins, his character Cooper. Walton Goggins, who's an absolute legend in this show, and the initial attacks. Actually, I'm not going to go into any. It's just him and his daughter on a horse. That's all I'm going to say. Visually, the music and everything, absolutely stunning. So that's and when stuff like that happens, it starts to spark my imagination. I start thinking about what would make, and the first thing I think about is what would make a good role-playing game. So I went back to my old 13th year ideas. Of course, there is a role-playing game out for Fallout at the moment by Modiphius, which is I've already ordered. It's on its way to me now, which is really good. My friends at Infinite Monkey Tales are actually running a campaign of that at the moment, and it's very, very good. It uses the 2D20 system, much like Dune does here. And even though I'm not 100% on board with the 2D20 system, it's a really good functional system. It works really well for Star Trek adventures for sure. So yeah, I'm looking forward to running that at some point when I finally get it. So that's me in post-apocalyptic games. I do like a bit of post-apocalypse. I really do. I prefer the kind of post-apocalypse where it is sort of nuclear based. It's sort of our own fault. Post-apocalypse with aliens is good fun. Alien invasions are great fun. But also, although saying that, if you've seen The Quiet Place parts 1 and 2, there's another one coming out at the moment called The Quiet Place called Day 1, which looks fantastic. And that's a very good post-apocalypse, because basically these creatures which have come from the sky only react to sound, so the survivors got to be as quiet as possible. If you've not seen it yet, go and see A Quiet Place. It's absolutely brilliant, wonderful film. And Emily Blunt is just amazing. I think she's my favourite actor at the moment. Her and Rebecca Ferguson, absolutely stunning actors. So, and in that case, then, if you want to see Emily Blunt in another good show, BBC's The English. Oh, brilliant! If I run a Western game, it's going to be like that show. Absolutely fantastic. I'll talk about Western games another day. I've been in a few Western games actually, and they are really, really good fun. Just normal Westerns, not even weird West, just normal Westerns. So anyway, sorry, I got off track there. So yeah, my focus, the stuff that kind of post-apocalypse that I like is usually sort of post-war, so post-nuclear, post-atomic, what have you. I got oversaturated with zombies, so the zombie apocalypse now doesn't really do it for me, because that's happened quite a few times. I did do one with giant spiders. Sorry for you arachnophobes out there. That was the culmination of a Call of Cthulhu game, where a spell, I can't remember now, oh my lord, it's been nearly 30 years, but something was released and all regular spiders basically became absolutely massive, about 20 times their normal size, even the normal household spiders. Can you imagine how many spiders there are? Imagine those suddenly exploding into huge sizes, swarming all over the world. So that was kind of post-apocalyptic. That was kind of set a few weeks after, because the spiders end up killing themselves and eating themselves, but only the big ones remained. So that was a lot of fun. I wish I kept my notes now for that. It's called a Cthulhu game, but yeah, that was a bit spooky. So, but yeah, I think the way Fallout did it was fantastic. I love that kind of 1950s aesthetic. So yeah, I'll see what I can do with the 13th year. It sort of retains that 1940s aesthetic, because the world basically hasn't progressed since the bombs dropped in 1945. And I also played around with alternate timelines and a shift in reality. And it's alluded in the game that when the Manhattan Project went off, when the first atomic bomb got exploded in the New Mexico desert, it's actually one of the theories was that the sky would catch fire and burn the whole world to a cinder, and they still set it off anyway. And another thing was the shifting of reality. That sudden shift, that you've just destroyed something at an atomic level. So that's set my ideas thinking, what if that first bomb actually did do that? It shifted reality somewhat. How has reality shifted with all the other bombs going off? What has that caused? What kind of breaks in the space-time continuum has that torn? So that's just a few ideas that I'm playing with. So yeah, post-apocalyptic stuff. I do enjoy it. I really do need to get a proper campaign out of it one day. But yeah. Anyway, I think I've pretty much covered that topic, and went off on a couple of tangents, and I do apologise, because that's what I do. But anyway, thanks for listening. Ta-ra.